Hey, good evening. Um, this video is particularly about another feature of Java 8. I did a one earlier about the Lambda expression, and I stuck in our method reference just for the kick of it. But this particular one is about the streaming API, which is something kind of I was very excited about. And the thing about the streaming API is a lot of it is actually possible because of lambda expressions and method references, as we'll see in a minute. Um, so I have here a list of strings, and I just have a method to go and get some, and then I want to iterate over the list of strings and do things with it. And of course, there's the old way of doing it, where we would just do a for loop or a while loop or something, where we would use pointers and things like that to iterate over the list of strings. And then, recently in Java 6 or Java 7, I don't remember particularly which one right at the moment, but we introduced the advanced for, which basically just made it very easy to, if you just wanted each one and then you wanted to do something with each one, you know, you got it and then you did something with it. So, but Java 8 introduced, the streaming API. So we have kind of a new way of doing things, and so basically all of these collections have a new little method on them called stream, and basically then you can use, and basically what that gives you is a stream, obviously, and then a stream has methods on it that allow you to do things. So for example, one of the most basic stream methods is for each, and so what for each takes is each of these guys takes, oops, sorry, each of these guys takes a, you know, interface of some type. This particular interface takes one called consumer. So, and the consumer is basically a method, or is it, sorry, is an interface that defines a method called accept. And so basically, it's just a way of giving you each element of that array. And one of the things to note about using things like for each is that these are not really intended to do manipulation, right, on the element list. It's more about like if you were to write it to a file or send it to a database or something like that. So, but anyway, so it takes a consumer, and then as you can probably remember from the lambda expression video, basically I can implement a consumer by using a lambda expression. So basically my lambda expression here takes each element of the string and then just logs it and says, okay, the next string is, whatever the string is. For each is so common that, it's such a useful method that actually it's been promoted directly up to, the collections themselves. So you can take a collection and do a for each on them and, loop over them. So there's another one called filter, and filter is exactly what it sounds like. It's, basically it has it goes to a interface called a predicate, and the predicate is da-da-da. Oh, sorry, the predicate. I'm trying to go there. There we go. Predicate basically implements or defines a single method called test. So it takes an element, and then basically you are to return true or false to say whether or not that element should continue being in the collection. So the idea here being is that you create a stream, you call filter, and then you provide the predicate. And again, I'm putting a lambda expression in here, so it takes a string and basically returns true if the string starts with capital A or capital C. The result of filter is another string, but it's a stream of a different collection. It's different from the original collection, so you're filtering one stream and producing another one that has, items that match the filter. And then I'm doing a for each on all of those and saying, okay, each of these strings starts with A or S. So that's filter. Map, I think people are familiar with the concept of what a map does. So in this case, I'm taking a stream, and then I'm basically converting each of the elements in that stream to a different element, and it doesn't. And in this particular case, I'm converting string to string, but I could, I could do anything I wanted here. I could return, I could map the strings to the length that they are, or something like that. So, but in this particular case, I'm passing a method reference as the, and I've been pointing out what the types of things are. So it takes what's called a function, and a function basically defines a method called apply. So it takes an element of one type and then returns an element of a completely different type, and it can be pretty much any kind of thing. So, that's kind of what goes to where map can basically transform each element of the collection to some other type that is completely arbitrary. So, all right, so that's map. And then another one is sorted. And sorted kind of makes sense because, collections like lists and things have already had sort, and they do very similar kind of thing where you pass in a comparator, right? So in this case, I'm reversing the order of the strings. And so I'm just saying, S was the next, reverse sorted string. So, and my, sorry, let me, I didn't realize that my context here wasn't going to fit in my little box. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is called collect. Okay, sorry, I don't know what that was. So collect is basically, I want to take all of the items together and collect them. So a collect, the collect interface takes a collector, and collector actually is an interface that has, multiple, methods in it. So this is actually a slightly different thing, and I'm not doing a lambda expression in this case. And collectors can be very complicated. I'm going to do a very simple collector where I'm just going to join the strings together, but you can do all kinds of different things, right? The idea basically being, though, that you're going to take all the values in that collection and reduce them down to some kind of, single object or something. You could be building an object from all of those elements, whatever. But you can define it very sophisticated. Basically, there's a, supplier, which is kind of, basically returning a container that's, things are going to go in, and then there's this accumulator, which, folds the value into the container, and then there's a, binary operator, which can, combine, two or more results. And there's also a function that you can call at the end. So it's this very, sophisticated interface, and allows you to do all kinds of different things. But again, I'm basically just going to use a collector that's already been defined, which is just joining, and then the joining takes a string that you want to join by. So I'm just basically reducing a result of strings separated by comma. The next one I want to, the next I want to talk about is reduce. And reduce is kind of, similar to collect, but a little different. The idea of reduce is basically that basically it's going to go through the collection, and it's going to give you pairs of elements. And then basically what you can do is you can kind of reduce it, and reducing, let me poke in there, and it will take a binary operator. So a binary operator interface basically, sorry, those two guys actually already are defined. Actually extend the SPY function. Okay. Sorry. That's not what I'm trying to do. Sorry. Here we go. No, get out of me. This stinks. All right, hold on. There we go. Okay, sorry. And the by function is apply. So basically, okay. So by function takes two parameters and then returns a third parameter, and all three types can be completely different. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically reduced does exactly that, right? It takes two parameters, and then basically it will return a third parameter, In this particular case, all three parameters are the same, but you get the idea. You can take, two items out of a collection and combine them together, in certain ways. That could be adding them together, or concatenating them, or comparing them and returning one of them, which is what I'm doing here. So I'm basically comparing the lengths of the strings and then returning, whichever one's longer. And eventually, when all the reduction is done, I will end up with the longest string. I had one more example here, but I have to move it up because it is in my little hiding zone. All right, so I'm gonna move that up there. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about is parallel streams. So you have all these streams that you go and you iterate over and you're doing things on, and basically what a parallel stream is that if you can do certain operations in parallel, so sorting is a good example of something you can kind of do in parallel, like when you do a split sort, right, where you take an array and then you split it in two, and then you split those parts in two, and all the way down, and then you combine them back together, right? So you can do all this stuff in parallel. So you can basically take a stream and convert it into a parallel mode, do some operations on it, and then the collect method allows me to take parallel streams and then put them back together. Parallel streams have some trickiness though, because you don't know the order of the operations of the things that are happening on the parallel stream. So you wouldn't want to do certain streaming operations in parallel, because they could produce very unpredictable results. So it has to be something where the order of how the operations are done with the parallel threads does not matter. So anyway, that's the streaming API. Very powerful, very extensible, and just really cool for doing stuff that you're going to do a lot of, because your collections, you're going to do a lot of work with them in your coding, and these new functions are really awesome. So please give feedback, please subscribe, little ninja guy in the bottom right. Thank you very much.